Hey everybody, it's B&T here for the American Intelligence Media, and today we are going to help you be able to identify some of the more sophisticated forms of propaganda that is being thrown down your throat, and which, after you learn how to identify it, you won't allow that to happen anymore. Hi Thomas, Douglas Gabriel, how are you today?
Well, good, Betsy. It's great to be here, and we're not interpreting Trump tweets, which is amazing, but they're so clear nowadays. It's just winning that, sometimes we don't even have to.
Well, I think it's important that our information warriors are able to identify other things in the field now that the battlefront, the front line of this great information war has moved forward. And so today we're going to give you specific examples. We're going to give you an example of disinformation, and then one that is really going to be shocking to you when you hear who we're going to be calling out as a shill, omission of information, and then a third example of no information. So in our disinformation category, we're going to look at the current event right now of Jeffrey Epstein. What do you have to say? Why are we being pushed disinformation here?
Oh, because it's anything but what it looks to be. Jeffrey Epstein is going to be charged now after Acosta, the head of the Commerce, what's he the head of? The
Labor.
Labor is, when he was down in Florida, he basically almost acquitted him. Even his 13-month sentence, Jeffrey didn't actually have to go to the prison. He would hang out there sometimes, but most of the time he spent time in his office.
Oh, he got a whole wing, too,
Yeah,
with a room and a wing. I mean, was a real cushy life.
They could not stop his addiction to sex. Now, let's remember that it's now come out in these documents, and this is what's really odd, to discredit Robert Mueller. I guess the Democrats, the demon rats, are going to let Mueller be thrown under the bus on this one, because he was the one who intervened and said that Jeffrey Epstein was an FBI asset and therefore couldn't be prosecuted to the same degree that others would, and basically acquitted him because the punishments he was given weren't punishments they would even acted upon. They just accept in form. So why would this be coming out now? Because why? Because it's in the Southern District of New York. Now that's where all the corruption goes on, and that's where they're continuing to attack Trump. So Trump and Epstein were in his plane, the Lolita Express, a few times. Yes, in America, Trump did not go to Lolita Island, did not go to the orgy island of Jeffrey Epstein. Now, the reason that Jeffrey Epstein was given immunity is because the reason they're never going to tell you, and this is the disinformation. The disinformation is he was used by the NSA, the CIA, the rogue CIA, the FBI, and everybody else to basically get blackmail and frame high-ups, monarchs, children of monarchs, some of the richest people in the world would go to Jeffrey Epstein's island, and they'd look around. They thought they weren't being recorded, but they were, and they were blackmailed. Now, that list is huge, okay? The list is absolutely astoundingly huge if you start to go over who has visited Jeffrey Epstein's island. So, how did he get away with it? He simply said, I have all the dirt on all the people you want the dirt on, and so I'm not going to give it to you unless I walk, or you give me the deal of the century. So, remember, Jeffrey Epstein was already implicated with Donald Trump. So, this is working out of the same group of people who have sworn through the Attorney General of the state of New York to work with the Southern District of New York to go after Trump for everything that they possibly can. Parking tickets, any of his family ever littered, you name it. Now, they just spent the last 3 years doing that, so what is there left to find? That he had a couple trips on Lolita Express, that's not going to go anywhere. But what is really happening here is they want to associate him, and I'm sorry to even bring this up, but if you remember during the election, they brought up a charge of a woman, Jane Doe, who brought charges against Epstein and Trump. That she never showed back up to court, and the other person that she said was part of this, that was a witness, she never showed up and had no contact number. And the contact number that Jane Doe gave, when the court contacted it and when a reporter got that number, it was a number of the Democratic National Committee.
Oh, who couldn't? We all remember that. They were trying to run that false flag on us early, but it didn't work. What, they going to resurrect it because that's all they have?
Yes, and Jeffrey is immune. And Mueller won't be, Mueller, well, I gave him immunity not because of me, but because he's been an FBI asset for so long and a CIA asset and a very, very valuable. I cannot reveal my sources and methods. This is one of my sources. Well, one of his sources happens to be the biggest pedophile on the face of the earth. So, everyone visited there that was anyone. If I started naming them, which I'm not going to, you would not even believe the people who regularly visited there to get sex. You wouldn't even believe it. And then when you say, but wait a second, they're the mouthpiece of the mainstream media. Yes, correct. These people were paid off with sex. Now, Bill Clinton went there 26 times, but he was in Jeffrey Epstein's Lolita Express airplane countless times because they were best of friends. And that doesn't count how many times they rendezvoused in foreign countries. And this is what Epstein was noted for bringing in. Oh, he assaulted, that we know of, over 120 underage girls, under 16.
Okay, well,
we know that.
We know that, but let's go back to the Southern District of New York, because you have James Comey's daughter on the prosecution team. No good is going to come of this.
Maureen, I think.
Maureen Comey.
She's one of 200 attorneys there. She's an assistant attorney general. A district attorney general, and yes, she has great power, and we don't know if she's on the case or whether she's recused herself, but I would bet that she's probably leading the charge, is what I would expect, because they don't hide their attacks against Trump. It is so common to attack Trump that people come way out, expose themselves way too much attacking him, and then we know who they are. For instance, the $50 million that went to the company that's carried on the work of Fusion GPS. Oh, all you have to do, you want to know who donated? The loudest people in Hollywood. We know that. And because we know that at least 10 million of it came from Hollywood actors to support the opposition against Trump. And now every day, they're in the press. I could name them. You know who they are. Every day, they're in the press, second only to the president. Some of these people are in the press more than any of the Democrat candidates, even right now. Cher gets into the press sometimes 2 times on one day.
All right, let's go back to the FBI. When you really look at it and you step away, give yourself some distance from it, it really is a criminal operation. And it's flying under the radar of being law and order, but it's really running like a mob thing out there at the FBI. And then one of the things they do for their friends who are criminals on the outside of the FBI, they give them immunity to do all their bad stuff so that they won't be prosecuted, but then they never go and search for the very crimes that they're committing. And Jeffrey Epstein isn't the only one. What about Felix Sater?
Well, how about Alan Dershowitz, his lawyer, who they now say was participating in the sex trafficking and getting some of it himself? And that he took it all the way to the Attorney General's office.
But the point, too, is that the FBI, any name, just name them. They're all FBI assets, and they all get immunity.
Felix Sater is a perfect example. Couldn't be any more criminal, and yet he's completely protected by Comey because he was an asset not only for the FBI, but for the NSA. Sources and methods. I made a joke about it, but this is all about sources and methods. So they're going to say that Stephen Halper, who conducted the attack against Trump, one of the major people in Britain, and he's also an American, he worked with Christopher Steele. Well, what's going to happen with him? Nothing. Why? Because he's a source and he's a method.
And so the reason they can't share their sources and methods with us is because their sources are illegal and unconstitutional, and their methods are illegal and unconstitutional. But because there's an illusion that this FBI thing is helps Americans and solves crime, we allow them to get away with this.
Oh yeah, like one of the things that's coming out now is they've resurrected the story of the truth that David Brock donated $200,000 and a friend of Hillary's donated $700,000 to seek out any women who Trump ever bothered so that they could pay them whatever they wanted to bring the charges against Trump. And that's how we got Stormy Daniels. Okay, remember, people forget this simple reality. Now, that was just one of the groups that advertised it. There was Crew, there was Blue Horizon, there was Bridge, and there was Media Matters, all put out ads saying, if Trump has ever bothered you, we're going to pay you hundreds of thousands of dollars to come forward with your true or untrue claims. And 4 women came forward. Only Stormy Daniels stuck it out. One other tried to, and then they found out it was such a fake bad story. They couldn't even stand behind it, so they didn't pay her. So Stormy got paid $250,000. That's the money. She also then paid Michael, her lawyer, and that whole thing, then she sued him, and then Trump sued her, and then she had to pay Trump. She had to pay for Trump's lawyer on that case because it was fake, 100%. Well, that's now out in the news again. And the people are named who actually paid for this. And it was Hillary Clinton herself who came up with the idea. And guess who funds those 4 groups? That would be George Soros.
So the point with this is that you need to read all of the articles about the Jeffrey Epstein event and realize that if it's mainstream media, you're being fed disinformation somewhere in that article.
Now,
and if it's alternative media, you also have to be very careful because we have a lot of shills out here in independent media.
Michael Cohen is being charged. There are 17 charges that came out of Robert Mueller's witch hunt, and those have gone to 3 different courts. And the one that's in the Southern District of New York is the one with Stormy Daniels, and that's the reason I brought that up. So they're going to try that again to say that Stormy Daniels was that Michael Cohen paying Stormy Daniels was a campaign contribution. They're going to ignore the 3 charges of the FEC against Hillary for what she did in the 2016. Don't get me started on all those details, but you couldn't get any worse than what she did. But they want to then resurrect this. And so look for that in the news, and that's the disinformation. The disinformation looks like Jeffrey Epstein's going to go to jail. Oh, guess who's Alan Dershowitz is also representing? Weinstein. What's his first name? The despicable, horrible sexual predator and Hollywood sex trafficker. He's representing him too. Well, why is he representing 2 people? Because those 2 people were feeding him his sexual pleasures. And this is now known with Epstein. So Alan Dershowitz may be thrown under the bus. A little bit of the credibility of Robert Mueller thrown under the bus. But I don't think Epstein's going to be thrown under the bus unless for some reason something has changed and some honest people have come to power. But they will certainly associate it with Stormy Daniels, and they will certainly associate it with Michael Cohen, and they will certainly associate the original charges of Jane Doe against Trump and Epstein, which is all disinformation.
Okay, next let's move to an example of omission of information. We saw a really slick video done by the Corbett report on Silicon Valley and the history of Silicon Valley. Oh, there was a nice video, so we know it took a lot of money to make it. And then James Corbett reads the script. I'm not sure if James put this together or if he was paid maybe by some Facebook people that are trying to polish up Mark Zuckerberg's reputation. And that's what I've read out there, that he is spending millions of dollars right now to do. But anyway, it was bothersome. But before we go into the bothersome part, talk about the good parts.
Yes, and remember that when we started off as Anonymous Patriots, it was to teach everyone how to understand perception management, because this is what this is: subliminal behavioral modification through perception management. In other words, how do you create a narrative? How do you spin it? How do you turn it into a neural network that gets stuck for your side, good or bad? In other words, how do you get people to remember the narrative you want them to remember? And that's what we taught you, and there's stages to that. And if you look, you will find them, and you can break that down. You can look at any video, you can look at any, listen to any audio, you can look at any TV show, read any news report, and if you simply follow some of these rules, you'll discover whether or not it's true or false. So here's the deal. First off, look at the overall scene. Corbett report. This is one of the slickest videos he's ever done. There wasn't a single mistake in it. It was so high tech. It was so amazing. I don't like to watch videos. And what he was saying was, I had to listen to the end because I wanted to see if he'd tell the truth. And he told some truths. 3/4 of it was truth. but 25 was missing, 25% missing. So as I'm listening to the truth part and seeing this fantastic video, and as Betsy said, who's paying for the video? Then what was the total bottom line message? This is what we need to jump to right away.
Well, let me just say something before you go there. What happens in alternative independent media is that there have been people placed out there early on, like I'm not going to name them. Y'all know who they are. And they have built substantial audiences. Well, you need a platform in order to have your voice heard. So these platforms have been developed. Sometimes the creators know that they were the platform all along to be the shills. Sometimes they're just getting used and unknowingly. So, is James Corbett that bad of a researcher that he couldn't come up with the full history? Or did he get paid to push this out so that people in his network could hear it? This way, he has over 300,000 subscribers. They all hear this same history.
Let's imagine that James's report was a shooting. What do we tell you to do first? First, notice who was there when it happened. And what did the scene look like? And where was the parameter set up? The first thing you have to look at is that. And the second you do, you'll know if it's fake or not. It will not even take listening to the report. You won't have to listen to any news. Look at the pictures. So let's look at the picture he presents. He presents the picture that there has been a shooting. And the shooting is that Silicon Valley, social media, has targeted all of us and surveilling all of us. Has surveilled all of us, and that it's built in, and that the government did that, used taxpayer money, still using taxpayer money. These corporations still do it, and all he was willing to say is that there was surveillance. Okay? Everybody knows that. They knew that when James Clapper got caught lying. They knew that when Facebook got caught lying in all the countries it's had to pay billions of dollars for their security breaches of people's information. We now know that all you have to do is go to Peter Thiel, who was with PayPal. Now he started a thing called Palantir. It has the ability to look at your Gmails. Everybody's stuff is 100% available. You don't even have to pay anymore. As long as you pay for Palantir, the program, you can get in and you can look at anybody's Gmail account, see all the YouTubes they've watched, look at their Facebook profile, look at their Google profile, whatever you want. It's all there.
And for all the people out there that say, I don't mind, I'm not doing anything bad, so I don't mind that everybody's watching me. Well, that's just the first step. The next nudge is control. That's when they control you.
And that's what he doesn't mention. And that's the point. Let me go back, digress a bit. When there's a shooting, what happens? The ambulances never get inside of the parameter that's set up by the police. Isn't that amazing? So how do they get the people from the shooting to the ambulance? And then you've seen them putting them in trucks, people carrying them.
Carrying the blocks.
You name it. Just insanity, right? Because they set up a parameter that they don't want anybody with a camera to go in beyond that parameter, right? And then they try to bring everybody out, but they can't make it look right. And so that's what's happening here. He's trying to say, oh, you're all surveilled. And just as Betsy just said, exactly as Eric Schmidt justified and said, well, if you're not doing anything wrong, what does it matter if we're spying on you? Okay, now this is the mindset of Eric Schmidt that just set up Dragonfly. Dragonfly now puts people in jail. 33 million Chinese have had all their freedoms taken away, and 1.5 Uyghur Muslim Chinese have been killed on his program.
And their schools are indoctrination centers, re-education centers. I have a video that I will attach with the link here about that. It's just appalling. And this is what the second step is.
He didn't go to China and write those programs, for somebody who accused me of making a ridiculous statement about that before. No, he took with him what it was already written. He didn't write any of it. He didn't. And by the way, James Corbett, why didn't you mention Eric Schmidt's $100 million investment in Facebook right before it got its IPO, and then he created a Federal Security and Exchange Commission shenanigan so that Eric Schmidt, could pull his money out faster than anybody who's supposed to be in that initial funding before the IPO. And so he pulled out his $100 million, and it was $100 billion, literally quickly thereafter. because of the fake valuation. Because LifeLog, which, yes, it's James Corbett, you came out with LifeLog.
Yeah.
You want to know why James Corbett mentioned LifeLog? Because we did. And we also showed and made sure that it went viral, the pictures that LifeLog ended on the day that Facebook started. And LifeLog was the CIA attempt to do exactly what Facebook says, a diary and your connectivity to everything. And it was supposed to be your logbook of everything. Yeah, it's supposed to keep track of everybody so that they could go after the terrorists, but they consider all of us terrorists now. So James Corbett did a good job with that. He did a great job giving good pictures of Silicon Valley, but he never named anybody except James Breyer from Excel Venture Capital. Now, he did mention a couple things.
He mentioned it, but it was an incomplete history. And so I'm going to start calling these out.
He didn't mention Highlands Forum, though he mentioned Excel, James Breyer.
He didn't mention IBM Eclipse Foundation.
He didn't mention Michael
James
McKibben.
P. Chandler or Michael McKibben. Why? Because they don't want you to know that part of their theft.
Now, let's look at the second thing you're supposed to look at. Did he speak from authority? Oh, yes, he's an authority. And how did he make you feel, James Corbett? Did he speak from? Oh, yes, he's the ultimate authority. He acts like nobody has a smarter brain than his. I'd love to have a conversation with that man because I don't think he writes his stuff. But anyway, the point is, the third point is, how does it make you feel? In the end, how did that report, James Corbett's report on Silicon Valley being funded by we the people through DARPA, through the defense...
lost and hopeless.
Yeah, lost and hopeless. Controlled, and you can't do anything. You're a cow. You're an animal in a pen. You can't pen. You can't get out. You're locked up. You're in jail. And who has us in jail? The Silicon Valley warlords, and nothing you can do about it. He makes that perfectly clear. This is standard operating procedure. It's institutionalized. It's okay. It's government agreed upon. It's government sponsored. Therefore, you can do nothing about it. It has to be legal or the government wouldn't be doing it. And Silicon Valley, there's nobody really there to hate. So don't hate Mark Zuckerberg because he's just like the rest of all of them. That's the way. So they focus on who? Brin and Page. Sergey Brin and Larry Page. Okay? And he does, James Corbett, give a little bit of the story. But why? Because we've already revealed that. 2 years ago? After the very first brave person revealed some of the truth about how Google was founded with Page and Brin and the National Science Foundation, and that's We the People's money. And then it was the National Venture Capital Association, which James Corbett mentions, that James Breyer, who we mention all the time, basically, he's the king of China, one of the kings of China, the digital kings of China right now, just like Eric Schmidt and Uri Milner. But James Breyer's mentioned in there, and Excel, but they don't mention Sequoia. They don't mention any of the real people. They mention the absentee people. And they make, sweet little Mark of the Zucker Beast look like he's okay, and he was just doing what everybody else was doing. Lie, 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 lie. James Corbett, either you don't have a computer when you write these, or you don't know how to do a Google search or a Yahoo search or a Dogpile search. You don't know how to do a search.
He's a poor researcher.
Plug in any of the major titles of your last talk and our articles will come up, and you ought to read them because then you'd find out about Highlands Forum, you'd find out about Andrew Marshall, you'd find out about the Office of Net Assessment. He mentioned the first contract being through the the Office of
Naval Intelligence.
Naval Intelligence. That is nothing. That's the tip of the iceberg. Yeah, he mentioned Palantir. He mentioned Peter Thiel. He didn't mention how those people got there or what they were doing with it. He didn't mention where they all stole it from and how to take the entire Silicon Valley down in one fell swoop because Leader Technologies has the original source code and is willing to give control of it to the president. And then he'd have control of all of them, and then he could make... Now, here's the deal.
To all the people that will say, well, then if you give control to Trump, then what about the next president? Help people sort that out. That really, it's the property of Leader Technologies. They're willing to lease it out to the president for his term for this purpose.
Yes, and first we would take back the crypto keys, what's called the...
Oh, don't get into that yet, because that goes into the next.
But anyway, we take back the crypto keys, and we take back the internet and all the social media and everything that uses scalability on the internet because it all came from one invention, a number of inventions that belong to Leader Technologies. So give them their due, and then the people who fall under the certifications and licensing and fall underneath that original patent and trademark and secret and invention, they all have to meet your standards. So if they are surveilling people, no, sorry, Google, you're surveilling people, sorry, you don't get to exist. We're not going to give you the crypto keys, and we're not going to give you a contract to use Leader Technologies source code. Same for all the social medias. So here's the deal, and I want to make this perfectly clear. James Corbett, you act intelligent. You can't be intelligent because all you talked about was surveillance. How about targeting and attacking, subliminal control, behavioral modification? How about the fact that your computer can actually send a thought to your head, whether it's on or not, and that you didn't mention it was the iPhone, which was the very device that was controlling the world, the smartphone. You didn't take it the last steps, and you left everyone with no hope that it's a done deal. And what always happens?
Well, no action plan. And I get tired of people out there that, we got to get up and do things. And we've given you a way to say, contact the White House and demand that Michael McKibben be given a meeting with Donald Trump so that he can explain how we can take control of all of these Silicon Boy kings and their digital tyranny. I don't want Band-Aids. I mean, it's all well and good that he's having the social media conference and our friends, the memers and the cartoonists and, the fun folks are out there. But these people wouldn't be able to have a platform to speak on if it wasn't for the creator and the inventor of social media scalability. And that's the person who hasn't received his invitation. So because of that, I think he needs a 30-minute meeting in front of the president.
And James Corbett, if you don't know that, you're a 75% partial information, misinformation,
yes.
Omission information.
And he's done this
and
before.
And you know you are. You have to know that because or else you can't Google.
This is why I don't put him on the cat report, because so many of his reports are like this one. But this is the time where we have to call it out because it's a very important topic right now. Can we
consider this a shooting? And we always tell you, here's the bottom line. There's 10, 12 steps, depending on how you want to break it down. One of the last steps is, the case is closed because the shooter killed themselves and or we killed the shooter one other thing, the shooter was already picked up by the FBI over and over again, is actually an FBI asset and is really being controlled by the FBI, CIA, NSA, whoever you want to call it.
No, the other one is where the FBI leaves the crime scene open for reporters and citizens just to pour in. They didn't put the tape around the crime scene. Remember what they did at San Bernardino? I mean, the FBI is a joke.
They are so pathetic. And the department, only more pathetic than them is the Department of Justice. And so Corbett, whatever your name is, you get 75% for presentation, but for the 25% that you omitted, you should simply just stop what you're doing, because what you're really doing is you're leaving people feeling hopeless. You just left everyone who watched that feel as if Silicon Valley controls their life. There's nothing that they can do. Mark Zuckerberg can't be stopped, and 5G's coming, and just get used to it because it's the government.
Okay. Next example is where we're hearing no information. Now think about it, folks. The mainstream media, corporate media, and I mean all of it, ABC, NBC, and Fox. I know some of you are still stuck thinking Fox is okay. It's not. It's corporate media. They are the reporters that are being paid. They should be going out and getting the stories, not us citizens out here. We don't have the resources to do it. So there is a huge gap of information we are not getting because the reporters work for the enemy and people out here have limited resources. So what is some kind of no information that we're not hearing about?
Well, you brought this up just the other day, Betsy. You said, what is the reason that Hillary Clinton is not going to the big high-tech convention that happens every year, and she backs out and doesn't give a reason? And here's the reason. The reason is because she's been called out for being the communist Chinese representative of Broadcom, and she's trying to now buy Symantec, and she doesn't want people to notice that she also owns
Symantec.
through Tomo Bravo and Entrust and James, what's his name? James Jones, who worked with her
I don't think that's the right name.
Okay, so
I'll have to correct it in the production notes.
Yeah, so she worked with a guy who was with her down at Rose Law Firm, who was her representative that bought the company that used to be called Entrust, that started in Canada, came to America with these other different names I've just mentioned, and then it went through many, many different names, but it's now really, it's Broadcom. And Broadcom tried to buy Qualcomm, and they wouldn't let them. Trump wouldn't let them at the last minute because they found out that really Broadcom is China. Hillary is China. She is a communist Chinese. That's the reason that Walmart came to be our number one manufacturer, and its headquarters was in China. And the Chinese Central Committee has a piece of every single company in China, period. And anyone who does work there, like James Breyer or Milner or Eric Schmidt, as I just mentioned, they have them bought and paid for. There's no way out once you do real business with China. Trump has gotten rid of all their semiconductors and all their microchips and all of our military, and now trying to get them out of ZTE and Huawei and get them out of our country and any of our technology, because at Lenovo, it's all evil. Anything with China is evil. So why didn't she go? She has been. Why? First off, ask yourself the question: why would they have Hillary Clinton, the person who can't run her own BlackBerry, the person who can't run her own server, the person who cannot email, the person who has the most compromised email server in history?
Well, that's because she has the keys, the encryption keys.
Correct.
But we have also discussed at length with how Donald Trump can take away her keys.
Easily, Mr. Trump, Mr. President. Each year you give the lease out for the PKI Certification Authority keys. Okay, it's called the Federal Bridge Certification Authority. It's through the Federal Common Policy Certification Authority Committee. And those are the IT heads of each of your cabinet members. They vote on who they give the lease to, and they have, since the beginning, given it to a company called Entrust, or basically their proxy. So your NSA crypto keys are being controlled by a corporation that works out of Shanghai through Hillary Clinton, hiding underneath, I'm not even going to give you the newest names because they change all the time. They just now took Richard C. Walker and made him the head of Broadcom, the guy who invented the Internet of Things, the aggressive remote control of all things, which is the thing that James Corbett should have mentioned, that patent. If he didn't do any homework. He just is simply reading a script. So Hillary, it works with James C. Walker, Agilent, and worked with the group in IBM Eclipse Foundation.
Richard C. Walker.
Richard C. Walker. And so she's right there with all these people. And now she's allowed Robert Mueller to get some of these crypto keys. She's allowed Michael Chertoff to get some of these crypto keys. But that's it. So 3 Americans actually own the crypto keys. So when you say who owns the internet, it is Hillary, Robert Mueller, and Michael Chertoff. Now that sounds crazy, but we've proven it to you with the help of Americans Innovation, their staff writers, and with the research of Michael Kibben and his amazing researchers. We have brought you all that evidence so you can look at it. We do not talk off the top of our head. So the omission is Hillary can't go because she has been shown to be the number one evil person representing the Chinese takeover of America digitally, which Trump has now busted. So she doesn't have any more power. And we suspect that Trump, already hearing this from us, because we're the only ones reporting on this, period. Please, you put in the notes, so you put in your remarks, anybody besides Abel Danger and Phil McConnell who told us about this, and then we researched it and we brought it forward with evidence. Now, Phil McConnell has been talking about this for a long time, and we've thanked him profusely. He didn't really like me thanking him profusely, but I did, because he told us those words, the Federal
Bridge Certification.
Bridge Certification Authority. Okay, yes. And so I'm looking for bridges. I'm not looking for keys on the internet. Finally, I find Entrust, and then I figure the whole scam out. But with only with researchers from Michael McKibben and Americans for Innovation and other researchers have we been able to bring the full story forward for you. So that's the omission. The omission is Hillary is probably losing, as we speak, her crypto keys.
No, it's not the omission. It's that we can't find out any information. This is the third category, no information.
Zero information. Oh, I'm sorry, zero information.
And that's a lot of what's going on because Trump could be making moves with sanctions, with economic sanctions, from the Treasury. Where are the reporters? They wouldn't even know what they're looking for. And then all we're seeing are the ripples on the pond from what's stirring up beneath.
And the way it's supposed to work is the Department of Justice is supposed to work quietly until they indict someone. And usually convict them, especially if it's what are their kangaroo courts when they're grand juries.
Well, talking about that, patriots in the field are getting a little antsy. We haven't seen anything come out from Bill Barr, and we are impatient. We want to know, are we being Jeff Sessions again? He's a senior executive service person. He's surrounded by the SES, Bruce Orr, Jesse Liu, all of these enemies of America. What's up with this? Are we going to see anything?
Well, we patriots aren't very patient because of the 2020 election. We want action now. We want some heads to roll. We want to see some hangings, some firing squads. We want to see life sentences because we have seen the crimes.
Yes.
They've been stuck in our face, and then we've seen people act with impunity like a James Comey again out there making stupid remarks about Robert Mueller, his best friend who gave him immunity.
Well, the reason his book is called The Higher Calling is because these people actually believe they operate in a realm of government that's higher than the Constitution.
So we're not going to see the overt actions. Now, you can see the covert actions because when they start to go after things get revealed, and sometimes they actually truly do get leaked to the free press, and then they report on it. And lately, you've been seeing both some cool things released that are great and some fake things that we're going over. That's why we're trying to show you how to know the difference. Do not get upset by a headline. First off, don't believe any headline. Read to the last two paragraphs and you'll find the headline usually is a lie unless it's a trusted source. Secondly, the disinformation means you have to read the details. They're going to tell you all the lies up front. Even Corbett, he told all the lies up front. They were half-truths because they didn't get you to the rest of it and didn't empower you to know that it was perception management and a narrative that he was giving you. And whose narrative was it? Silicon Valley's narrative. You thought he was against Silicon Valley. Oh, because why? He said bad things about them. That's what they have to do when they cartoonize, when they get the tail to wag the dog. They have to give you some truths, and then they give you half-truths, and they give you twisted stuff, and in the end, they always make you feel the way they want you to feel. That's what a news report is supposed to do. They have their report written in their head. They know what they want to accomplish. They simply use facts, omission, disinformation, lack of information, all of that simply to make their point. And that's what we're seeing with these reports. So be careful out there. Do not get discouraged. If someone wants to give you some really, really bad news, like they're trying to give you bad news on Epstein, right? Don't believe it. Read to the bottom of the article and then check their sources and then do your homework. And what you will find is most of the time it is the opposite of what they say.